Hey, I'm Shane Baldacchino, Solution Architect at AWS, and today we're live at Sydney Summit with AWS Twitch Live. And I'm joined by AWS Evangelist Extraordinaire, Nikki Klein. And
hi, everyone.
We have special guest here today from Nab, Lupsko Trapersky. Welcome.
Thank you.
Lupsko, NAB is one of Australia's largest and oldest financial institutions, but look, there may be quite a few of us out here that aren't familiar with National Australia Bank. Tell us about NAB and specifically what you do at NAB.
So I'm one of the AWS technical trainers in the Nab Cloud Guild, and I'm also a senior DevOps and automation consultant within the ACP team.
What is the Nab Cloud Guild?
The Nab Cloud Guild was an initiative that we launched officially 12 months ago when Patrick Wright announced it at last year's summit. So we had this objective of training as many people within NAB on cloud technologies, and so far we've trained 4,200 people in the last 12 months.
Wow.
And
yeah.
we kicked it off with 3 people 18 months ago, and we had 8 certified people within NAB, and currently we have over 500 AWS certified engineers.
Incredible.
Which is second only to AWS themselves.
Yeah, I believe National Australia Bank is one of the largest employers of AWS certified people in Australia.
Yeah, well, we're hoping to take over from AWS soon.
We will see. All right, so I believe you just gave a lightning talk about onboarding new developers at National Australia Bank at lightning speed. What inspired you to give this session, and more so, what services did you use?
Yeah, so my first day at NAB, my head of at the time, when I started, he said, look, I just want you to record from this date on, at what point you feel like you've actually contributed something back to NAB and when you become a productive employee. Because within NAB, within my team, we actually had a 4 to 6 week delay between when someone first started and when they were actually contributing to our projects. And there was a number of reasons why that was the case. Because we're a bank, you would expect that we have a highly secure environment.
Of course.
We have a very complex network topology which people have to navigate around so they can understand it. At the time, we had a really limited set of local tooling, so we didn't have things like Docker locally, we didn't have programming runtimes. A lot of that has changed now. And what we discovered when we came to last year's summit is AWS introduced a new product called Cloud9. And 3 of the people within...
What's Cloud9?
Oh, so Cloud9 is a web-based IDE. So it's an open source product. Essentially, you can run up an EC2 instance, or if you're in America or Europe, you can run it up as an AWS service. But if you're in Australia, you have to build it yourself. So it's a web-based IDE, you run it on EC2, and it gives you a fully functional IDE running on a EC2 instance. So because it's already in your VPCs, and you can attach roles to it, it gives you network connectivity, and you've got security permissions.
Makes it really easy to create AWS resources in code.
Lupsko, I've started as a developer at NAB. What is it like? What is my day one like? Or what was it like, and maybe what is it like today?
Look. Day one for me 18 months ago was really complex. So we couldn't deploy anything. It was really hard to actually get anything installed on your laptop. We only had Windows laptops. Macs came a little bit later. There was no tooling. Getting access to accounts was complex. And then when you're in the accounts, it was actually really hard to deploy services. So we had a few different projects which contributed to that, but one of the major things for us was being able to deploy that Cloud9 service and then being able to use that to facilitate our other deployments of all our other services. Since then we've had a few different projects. We had a continuous compliance project where the security team can use Lambda functions within our accounts to actually monitor IAM roles that we create. And if anything in those IAM roles doesn't meet our compliance standards, it actually dynamically changes the IAM role so that it does comply with our standards, which means that we can actually create our own IAM roles for the first time.
So you've got safety mechanisms here to catch, I guess, potentially bad practices that are occurring.
But you give the developers autonomy essentially in the AWS account.
Yeah, well, we've actually got another product that we've been developing in-house where we can deploy a fully autonomous production pipeline all the way from dev test into our production accounts, and it has stage gates where we can run it through security controls, we can run it through compliance, we can run it through software assurance, and these are things that we didn't have 12 months ago, and we could only really do them because we partnered with AWS to create these products for NAB to be able to launch services safely and securely within our environments.
All right, and it sounds like Cloud9 plays a big part of this. Like, I remember working for large organizations in the past, and I've tried to install maybe like an IDE or a tool on my laptop, and I've been out of luck. So like, does that issue occur, I guess, at National Australia Bank? And more so, how are you overcoming these challenges?
Cloud9 was a game changer for us, especially before we had Macintoshes, which only really came out about 12 months ago. We had these laptops where they had nothing. Like, they gave you Windows, they gave you, Word, and you could write documents, and you could check your emails, but you couldn't do anything else on there.
Couldn't install anything on the system.
Not at all.
Not your favorite IDE or a terminal client?
Yeah. So we had the Mac at Nab project come in, and we had a few different teams within DevOps contribute to that project. So I was on part of the project that allowed us to run Docker locally on our laptops, which was the first time we were able to do that, and that only came in about 3 months ago. There's self-service portals, so we now have all the tooling that we can get through in the account, but just being able to install things locally wasn't enough for us because we don't have internet connectivity in our accounts. We have to access all the services through VPC endpoints, and to actually get our services into an S3 bucket, to get files into an S3 bucket, to be able to hit our API gateways, we need to actually be within the AWS environment. And that's where running Cloud9 as an IDE in our AWS environment allowed us to do more than what we could do on our laptops.
It sounds like a bit of a game changer. You don't need to engage those network teams. It's shortening that feedback loop and making, I guess, more productivity.
So Cloud9 was like your secret sauce to taking a developer from zero to hero on AWS.
It wasn't the only thing we did. It was sort of a collaboration of a lot of different teams all contributing projects, which made things a lot easier for everyone. But we've set up a structure now where people within NAB, if they've got an interesting project where they're building something that they find useful to the entirety of the bank, we can share that out. So one of the things we're working on is bringing in products from Ubank where they've deployed customizations for ECS, and we're trying to roll that out across the entire bank. But Cloud9 really helped. The continuous compliance project really helped. And just being able to have everyone contribute to making NAB an easier place to work for everyone that worked on AWS and NAB.
Yeah. All right. So I got to see, the tail end of your session before. Sometimes having a laptop that is locked down can be challenging. What are some of the, I guess, tips and tricks for, I guess, unlocking developer freedom? Maybe you mentioned before developers, or as a new IT person, previously it was just Windows. How am I going to, enable this Windows laptop to be able to do some amazing things?
Yeah, so we really struggled when we were on Windows. I don't want to talk specifically about that, but essentially what we did was we found that the only thing that we could do was install things that didn't require us to have local admin access. So we ended up trying to find ways to be able to use tooling that didn't require that. And one of the things that we did do in that is we found that we could use Cygwin or Baboon and install those without local admin access, and that would allow us to be able to build tooling like the AWS CLI on our laptops and have like an emulated Linux environment.
And that's a good thing. We talk about least privileges, role-based access control.
Yeah.
I think being able to accomplish this without using elevated privileges locally is fantastic.
Well, within NAB, we don't have the option for elevated privileges.
Because IT would prevent that from...
Well, yeah, it's with any major bank, you would expect that we have a very high level of security. So where in a traditional organization, you would get an AWS account, it would have internet gateways, and you would have private and public subnets and NAT gateways, and if you needed something, you could just go grab it from the internet. We don't have those. We only have private infrastructure. All the connectivity to our accounts is via an AWS Direct Connect, and the only ports that we can actually access in our application VPCs are port 80 and port 443. So even if you wanted to say SSH into an instance in our production application environments, you couldn't. There's no way. You kind of have to find ways to be able to get in to be able to perform diagnostics on our account because it is so secure, which is what people expect of us, but
Absolutely.
it can also make things really challenging
From
for
the
a
development
DevOps
perspective,
person.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
So, without jumping ahead here, so I'm assuming you're using maybe Cloud9 as a bastion.
Yeah, well, that's what we found. It was like we used to have bastions in shared accounts, and we had a dedicated bastion that the security team would set up for us.
Yep.
We could get into that bastion, and then that bastion would allow us to get into our production VPCs. And with Cloud9, we found we could actually still maintain that bastion role, but have something that did a better way of doing it. So you can still use it as a bastion, but you can also use it as a fully functional IDE. You can compile code on it, you can write, you can test, you can deploy. And the beautiful thing is, because you can attach an IAM role to it, because it's an EC2 instance, you don't actually have to have privileges stored in credentials files on that instance.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, which means that even if our instances were compromised, there's nothing in there that could be taken. There's no secrets
Yep.
there. Everything is done with least privilege and IAM.
Yeah, and look, just to level set for those who aren't familiar with what a Bastion host is, like a Bastion host is, like a host that you may use to gain access to other resources on your network. So rather than exposing, your environment within your VPC, you may expose the VPC and use that as a mechanism to gain access to the other resources. All right,
We did get one question from Bacon Flakin. Does Cloud9 have built-in support for GitHub commits from local devices? I don't know if you know that.
Whoa, complex.
Bacon Flakin.
GitHub commits for local devices.
Do you guys even use GitHub?
We do use GitHub, but we don't use the public GitHub. We have our own
Figured.
deployment of GitHub. So actually, we can't use any web-hosted services. So every service that we use within Nab has to be hosted within Nab. So I can't
I'm going to
answer
look
your
into
question,
that for
sorry.
you, Bacon Flakin. I will answer that after the stream.
Excellent. So, you've made all these changes. Potentially, if I was to get that job at National Australia Bank, 6 months ago, life would have been hard. What's it like being a developer now?
Look, I think Nab is one of the greatest places you can work as a developer in Nab now. We have something really unique in our environments and also in our learning culture with the Cloud Guild. I think we've achieved something which really isn't heard of within the industry. We've given free training to 4,200 people.
That is absolutely amazing.
So when,
Yeah.
when you get hired as a developer at Nab, do you immediately go through the AWS certification process, or how does that work?
Look, where we can, we actually try and make sure that when we hire people, they come in with AWS certifications. But where we've got existing staff, we actually want to train them up and make them cloud competent. We haven't limited that to just IT. We've actually put it across the board. So
Wow.
it doesn't matter if you're a mainframe developer or you're a graphic designer. We actually want everyone to be really competent with the AWS services.
Yeah, and I think that extends even outside of
incredible.
IT. So I have a friend who works for National Australia Bank, very large employer. They work in HR. And
he has to be AWS
I
certified?
don't think he has to be AWS certified, but he's been given the opportunity to do, like some of our basic training.
That's
and he's
incredible.
like amazing. So
That
I
is
think it's
literally
awesome
incredible.
that you're extending that common knowledge, outside.
Yeah.
Let's go. We're having so much fun here, but we are almost out of time here. If I guess there's one thing that you'd like to finish up with here today, what would you like to tell our listeners here on Twitch?
We did get one question. How do you handle federation for Cloud9?
Federation?
Yeah.
As in...
You're talking IAM? are we?
Authentication.
multi-step login process and alternative.
Yeah, do you have two-factor auth set up for your Cloud9?
We would if we could actually access the AWS service, but we can't get to it because we're not in the EU or the US regions. So we actually had to build our own login service. And what we essentially did was we built Cloud9 behind an Nginx wrapper, and the Nginx wrapper generates certificates on creation. It creates a login portal where it takes login credentials from SSM. So when you launch your Cloud9, you input your credentials, and then that then fetches those credentials when you log in.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Lupsko, thank you very much for your time today. But before I leave, Nikki, have you watched This Is My Architecture before?
Oh, you mean that thing with the nerds and the blackboards?
Well, yeah, kind of. They're. I think we're all nerds here.
I just remember it being a bunch of chalk and a bunch of nerds talking about stuff.
I think it's partially accurate, but it's more than that. It's about innovative cloud architectures running on AWS from customers and partners. And would you believe they have clocked up over 300 episodes now on YouTube.
Wow, I actually didn't know that.
And this time we have This Is My Architecture live at Sydney Summit.
Really cool.
So we're going to cut over now to This Is My Architecture.